Welcome to the Multifamily Zone, where business meets family. We explore what the entrepreneur life looks like from the family perspective. Now here are your hosts, Julia and Gino Barbaro.
Hey everyone, this is Julia Barbaro, host of the Multifamily Zone podcast. I'm here with the co-founder of Jake and Gino, my husband and co-host Gino Barbaro. Hey Gino.
Julia, how you doing today?
I'm good.
We've got a special guest today. Let me read the bio, because this bio could be taking like 10 minutes, but I'm going to condense it down. He is an amazing person, amazing doctor. During his past 2 decades in private practice and beyond, Dr. Maffetone has been a respected pioneer in the field of complementary medicine, bringing the latest advances to healthcare professionals around the world. He is an internationally recognized researcher, educator, clinician, and author in the field of nutrition, exercise, and sports medicine and biofeedback. Another paragraph, I have to read this because this is important, because Dr. Maffetone probably saved my life in my late 20s. So this is really important for me. Since the 1970s, Dr. Phil Maffetone has warned against sugar addiction and carbohydrate intolerance, along with pioneering the use of biofeedback via heart rate monitoring devices. His approach has been proven successful by thousands of MAF devotees. Dr. Phil is committed to making the Maffetone method available to everyone. Dr. Phil, welcome to the show.
Hi, Gino and Julia. I'm great. I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And
Who
everyone
is
should
that
know
bio about now?
The bio made me laugh because I know you as my dad. So that's what I know.
That's right. So everyone out there, this is Julia's father. So seriously, everyone, I need you to pick up a pen, a piece of paper, because I want you to take notes. Because like I said earlier, I don't know if everyone caught it 30 seconds ago, I think Dr. Phil, Dad, he probably saved my life in my late 20s, because I was working at the restaurant. I was your typical overworked, nutrition starved person, really high revved up. And I was not healthy. I was strong, but I was not healthy. And I think he saved my life, got me into a better path. And it was always with me working hard, working stressful. I don't know if you remember, Dr. Phil. You remember those early days for me?
I do remember, and I'm glad I was able to help out. But you did the work. I just made the suggestions.
But the thing is, so when you make suggestions to people, what do you see people failing? Because I want to talk really about nutrition and how to get people on board, because you can tell somebody to bring them to water, but how do you make them drink? For me, I was at the end of my rope. My back kept bothering me. I was looking for solutions, and I knew you were well respected. And I said, I have to listen, because he knows what he's talking about. How do you get people to take those suggestions that you give them?
Well, that's the big question: is can you explain things enough to convince them to take that step? And really, it's their decision to make. They have to first decide, yes, I'm going to make changes. I'm not happy with the state of my body, the state of my brain. I don't like these abnormal signs and symptoms. I don't like being tired. I don't like waking up during the night. I don't like having low energy, being hungry all the time, blah, blah, blah. And when you say, okay, I'm ready to make a change, that means you're ready to make a change. You don't say, well, let me know what I have to do first, and then I'll let you know whether I'm willing to make those changes. Because I'm not willing to do certain things. I'm not willing to eat right. I'm not willing to exercise, but I'm willing to do this and that. I struggled with this my whole career. In the early years of practice, you remember, Julia.
Yeah, definitely.
I burned out more than a few times, and the reason I burned out was because I devoted so much energy to people who didn't want to get better, and stupid me, thought, hey, I just need to explain to them better. I need to, spend more time with them. I need to call them and say, how is your, how are those dietary changes going? Are you taking your, and after about 10 or 12 years of that in practice, I said, this is nuts. I'm not doing that anymore. Because the people that want to be helped are seeing me, and I'm drained of energy, and it's really taking away from them. And so I made the change. And my whole career, which 20 years, as you noted, was spent in private practice, but my whole career of 40 plus years is all about helping people. And I've done it in so many different ways. I did one-on-one practice where people came in to see me. I started writing articles, started writing books, started doing lectures. And today I'm doing everything online.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's been a lot of fun, and it's still rewarding. And I'm, you know, and I'm not able to hear the people complain.
Could you mind if we just jump back to the early years, why you got into nutrition? I mean, give us that story of what prompted you to get into and become an AK.
Well, you know, it was early. It was probably in high school, but certainly in undergraduate school. I was struck with the notion that walking through the cafeteria with a tray of food, I was struck with the notion that, hey, wait a minute, I'm halfway through the line. I'm waiting to pay, and I'm looking at this food, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, this isn't real. This can't be good for me. And I turned around and walked away. And that was sort of one of the big steps I took. And it wasn't too much after that, you know, I was diagnosed as a diabetic. And I said, hey, wait a minute, I'm not going to shoot insulin. I'm going to find another way to do it. And I did.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, I had all these other health problems and was able to overcome them. Not in an easy way. It was very difficult because I didn't really have many people who really supported me in doing these weird things. Like, what do you mean you're not eating sugar? What do you mean you're eating healthy food? Because back, you know, in the 70s, that was not an accepted thing. You were considered weird.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is very similar to what we go through in multifamily real estate. A lot of students want to get into multifamily and they hear from their peers, are you crazy? It's too risky. I mean, and you sound like the pariah back in the 70s. You're doing it all by yourself and you don't have any outlook, any help. So is that one of the reasons why you created Math? Because I'm assuming the online community really helps a lot of people out there and letting them know that they're not the only ones out there that don't feel good and want to get help. So that sounds like one of your missions as you've gone through life. Let me help as many people as possible through our community.
Exactly. And MAF stands for maximum aerobic function. And MAF refers to the body's ability to burn a lot of fat, potentially, for energy. And humans, in the very beginning, humans made some huge changes in their existence. Their brains got bigger, their bodies got bigger. And it was all because they were eating a high-fat diet. And they didn't have carbohydrates. Once in a while, they'd stumble on a beehive and take the honey and suffer the consequences. But for the most part, they ate a high-fat diet and some protein, but they didn't eat high protein. And we have that ability now to burn massive amounts of fat. Even the leanest, I always say this, even the leanest among us has enough body fat to go hundreds of miles, walking, running, biking, whatever you want to do. That's how much stored energy we have. And if we can tap into that energy, our brains work better, our bodies work better, we're healthier, because in addition to growing a bigger brain, humans built a bigger body as well, but they also developed protection against diseases, and they also protected themselves against rapid aging, which they had been doing previous to that, and a lot of animals do. Humans live a long time, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so MAF, maximum aerobic function, refers to that ability to burn more fat. And there are things in your diet, exercise factors, your whole lifestyle contributes to that ability to burn more fat or turn off your fat. If you turn off your fat, you start storing it.
So let's go into some of the steps that a person can take to become healthier as far as nutrition goes. I want to touch on the vegetarian, vegan aspect that's been going on in society where more people are shifting towards that. Maybe give some facts on that, talk about that type of lifestyle. And, you know, basically those steps where you can see people can start taking today. Because I see out there, a lot of people are drinking soda. A lot of people are having fast food. A lot of people are eating too much carbohydrates. Give me some steps that people can say, okay, I can start.
Yeah, junk food is the new global cuisine. We're talking about not just the Western world. We're talking about developing countries like India and China, and other areas in Africa where they've been eating junk food for years. In fact, since the 60s, when people started, organizations started sending starving people food, they were sending junk food.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, did they stop starving to death? Yeah, they did. But they just kept eating that junk food. And that's why you have a country like India that's 80% overfed. The adult population of India is 80% overfed. China, about 80% of Chinese adults are overfed. What's going on in the world?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I want to go back to your question, because it's interesting how much I learned from patients. When I was first in practice, I had a corporate CEO guy from New York City, a fairly new company. Him and his partners had built the company up, and they were now really busy and real successful. And he came in and he was overfat, exhausted, couldn't sleep, was falling asleep in board meetings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I did a very lengthy exam, took an oral history, did blood tests, sent him out for more evaluations. And about a week later, he came back and I had all the results. And I spent time explaining all the results to him and what it meant. And then I said, okay, here are the things you can do to fix this. It's all something you can fix. It's not hard to do, but here are the things you can do. And I said, okay, here are the exercise things that are important. You need to do more of these, less of these, none of that. And I talked about that. And then I said, in terms of your diet, these are the things you want to do more of. This is what you have to stay away from. Here are ways you can eat out in restaurants and not eat in an unhealthy way. And I went through all the physical, biochemical, mental, emotional stresses and how they fit in and how we can do, and went on and on and on. He was very, very attentive. He was taking notes. He was really excited, and he thanked me profusely, and he never came back. And what I heard from the people who were patients who had referred him was that he was so overwhelmed, he had no idea what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was a real important lesson for me. And I've used it ever since. I've used it in my lectures. I've used it in podcasts like this. Where the heck do you start?
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the priorities, we can, and whether you're trying to get healthy by eating better, trying to be a better athlete through training, trying to just exercise, trying to be a better business person, trying to be more successful in whatever you're doing, family life, et cetera, et cetera. It starts from the top down. It starts in the brain. And if we don't have a good functioning brain, nothing is going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it all begins. And there are nutritional factors that can help the brain. There are exercise factors that can help the brain. There are stress relationships that can help the brain. Plus, there are dietary, exercise, and stress factors that can trash the brain. And that's often what happens.
Mm-hmm. So it's a great point. One of my mentors passed away, Jim Rome. I've been doing a lot of reading on him. There's two things that everyone needs to do on this podcast. The first thing is they need to change their philosophy. If you're doing something wrong, own up to it. If you're overeating, it's okay. Just own up to that fact. And what you've been doing, you have to change. And the other point that Phil said, it's real easy to do something. And it's real easy not to do something. It's easy to take Dr. Phil's advice and go and get checked up, but it's also easy not to follow that advice. So it's really important to look within and see if you really want to get checked. And that's a problem when you overwhelm somebody with too many steps. Mm-hmm. It's like thing. So what would you say a couple of steps are as far as eating healthier? What would you tell a person to do? Okay, let's start eating healthy today. What a couple of things that I can do?
Well, sometimes when I lecture, I talk about all these problems that people have, all these signs and symptoms, all the diseases, all of the pre-disease conditions, the risk factors, the high cholesterols and sugars and whatever. And I gradually bring it all down to one cause. And the cause is excess body fat. But the cause of excess body, it's like a kid. The kid says, "Hey, why is this?" And you give him the answer, and he says, "Why is that?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, we could do the same thing with health and fitness. What causes this? Well, it's that. What causes that?
Mm-hmm.
And we keep backing up until we get to some of the real primary problems. And the one problem that most people have is sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just sugar. People, when they hear sugar, they think, "Oh, well, I used to put 2 teaspoons of sugar in my coffee. Now I only take 1.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you want, a prize for that? But the fact is, if they eat a bagel with that coffee,
Right. Yeah.
that's like putting 4 more teaspoons in the coffee. So what we have is a situation where we eat refined carbohydrates that turn to sugar immediately after they're consumed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exactly the same as eating pure sugar.
Right.
So getting rid of the sugar is the most, I mean, I've seen a lot of miracles in practice. I have miracles I've seen that I wouldn't even tell people about because they're so unbelievable. They make me feel good. I sometimes think about them, and I'm grateful that I've been able to help people along the way.
Mm-hmm.
But of all the miracles I've seen, getting off sugar is the thing that brings the most miracles.
Yeah,
And so just that one, that one.
Mm-hmm.
So you say to people, you just have to do one thing.
Right.
Stop eating sugar.
Yes. It's as a parent, like I feel like, back when I was younger, you're only responsible for yourself. But as you have children, now you're responsible for this whole house full of people. And what I buy at the grocery store is going to affect my kids and their future. And it's so important, and it's going to affect my husband and his work. What we allow the kids to eat, what we allow ourselves to eat, like you were saying, it does affect how we work, our mind, our brain, right? Our mood. I know my husband's smiling.
So basically what she's saying is she's got to feed me really well or else I'm not going to make the money.
Yes.
And we can't keep having these podcasts.
So my kids, my
check.
husband, when they're out and about and it's lunchtime, I will text them, "Did you eat?" "Yes." "What did you eat?" And then my husband doesn't answer back because I know that means he didn't eat.
Yeah, you can always tell.
Yes, I can always tell. It's so important to me because I know it affects what they're thinking, what their mood is, how much work they got done. It does, and we're responsible for that as the parent.
Exactly, and it's not easy because as you start having kids, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
they go to other people's houses who may not be as conscientious as you are. They go to events. There's homeschool events.
Mm-hmm.
There's this. There's that.
Right.
And they're exposed to a really sick society, and it's a very delicate thing. My approach is different than your approach may be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know what my approach is.
do.
It's really kind of like,
Let's share it with everybody else because we know it, but what is your approach?
well, my approach is just, you just don't eat junk food.
Right.
Period. You don't eat any junk food. There's no cheating days. There's no cheat
Mm-hmm.
days. There's no moderation.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, for many years, I developed something called the 2-week test back in the early 80s. And the 2-week test is a period of 2 weeks where you get off junk food. You don't eat any high glycemic carbohydrates. So you don't have any fruit or fruit juice, no junk foods. And you can eat as many healthy fats and proteins and other vegetables as you want. But I discovered in the very beginning that people who cheat halfway through, or they're out and there's nothing to eat, they claim, and they eat a snack that's bad, I found that they need to start all over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just the other day, I saw a new study. I think it was in one of the JAMA journals, high-end scientific journal, that showed, and they took 28, 29-year-old healthy men, and they put them on a low carbohydrate, high fat, moderate protein diet. Basically, the kind of recommendations I make, but I want people to personalize it. I don't want to give them a diet.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept them on that diet. In research, you have to put them on a diet because it's a control issue. And they had a group, they had a cheat group and a non-cheat group, and the cheat group had an unhealthy snack in the after 2 weeks. And what they found was measurable pathological changes in the blood vessels right after that cheating episode, which of course didn't exist in the control group. And so if it happens to healthy 28, 29-year-olds, what's it going to do to people who are older and not quite as healthy as a healthy 28-year-old? So the sensitivity of our bodies to these foods, we never ate this way in the history of humanity until really a few hundred years ago. 5,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution started processing food, but the processed food was so raw and rough. If you had it today, you'd never be able to eat it because it was so. It was cardboard and fiber. That was the bulk of it. And as they could process more and more, the food became more and more refined and something we could chew, and white flour appeared a few hundred years ago. So it means we need to plan ahead. If we're going out, if we're going to shop, if we're going to take a trip, we need to plan ahead. Where are we going to get our food? And man, I used to be so obsessed about this because you couldn't get good food years ago. It wasn't around.
Right. It's so available now. It's so available.
It's more available. There are a lot of places where it's difficult to get, but you can go into a big grocery chain today and buy your lunch from the shelves, picking and choosing, whatever utensils you have or don't have. And it's just, so there's no real excuse. You still need to plan, but it's much more doable today.
Dr. Phil, were you ever a vegetarian in your life? I mean, and what are your thoughts on vegetarianism?
I was a vegetarian early on for a while. It was at a time when I still had some physical health problems, and I thought, a friend had recommended, a colleague who was a doctor who had put a lot of people on vegetarian diets, recommended it. And I was a little reluctant, and I was able to do it and get enough protein from eggs and cheese. And I continued it. I felt a little better, but I never really got as well as I would eventually become. I continued for a while, and then I started getting cravings for meat. And we have to pay attention to our cravings. And when you say that to people, they say, well, I crave sugar. Does that mean I should eat sugar? No, that's called addiction. And so it's not a true natural craving. But I started craving meat, and then I thought, what is this craving thing? And then I started craving duck. And I thought, duck? How could I be craving duck? So one day I had some duck, and I felt so good. And I waited a few days thinking, maybe I'm going to collapse or something. And I just felt so good. And then I started thinking about having a steak, and I ended up having, I think, 6 steaks in 6 days. And I felt, I was feeling pretty good anyway, but I felt so much better. And so,
what made you feel better, though? I mean, like, what do you think made you feel better from eating meat?
I think it was the additional protein, it was the additional healthy fat, and I think there was an iron. I was having an iron metabolism problem, and meat, red meat in particular, has a very good source of iron that you just can't get anywhere else. So I think the combination of things really got me up to the next three steps up to the next level. And I just kept going from there. I mean, I've had to make changes all along the way. It's, you know, as we age, as we age, our body changes, and as our body changes, our needs change, and we have to keep up with those needs. Our body tells us, hey, are you eating too much fruit? Or hey, are you eating too late in the evening? Or are you not eating in the morning early enough? We have to pay attention to them and then kind of experiment a little bit to see what works. Once you get rid of the sugar, your brain works so much better. And we develop the intuition that we naturally have, the instincts we naturally have. Just like every other animal on Earth, every animal on Earth knows how to eat except for humans.
Well, that's the thing, is we're always busy, right? So we're always busy. So like you said, you just go and get whatever is available because we're not thinking ahead. And that's the challenge, really, especially when you're working, is to think ahead. If you know you're going out, where are you going to eat? Because I know that my family, including you, Dad, if you don't have food, you're not gonna be able to function. Just what it is. Probably a couple hours in, right? So it's so important that we think ahead, and especially as a parent with children, if we're going out, where are we going to eat? What are we bringing? Super important. But like you said, our body changes as we grow, and the kids, I notice too, is that they need food more often when they're younger, and as they grow older, it's a little bit less then, and you got to keep, you know, with the fruit, like you're saying, a lot of the younger kids eat more fruit. So it's important to pay attention to everyone's body, how they, because I know that you always say, you know, the thinnest person out there is probably the most unhealthy, because it just shows something, right? Isn't that what you always told me? Where they could be thin, it doesn't mean that they're healthy. Yeah.
Right.
So
Thin
tell me a little bit,
people.
tell everyone a little bit about that, because I think that's so fascinating.
Well, there's a few things. One is a lot of thin people have very low muscle mass, and that's a big problem. It's a very big problem today. And if you have low muscle mass early in life, you're in trouble, because starting around age 25 or 30, we start losing muscle mass. And by the time we're 60, 70, and 80, we're in trouble. And muscle mass does not necessarily equate to strength. You can have really good strength and be very lean. I could show you my weights. I lift some pretty heavy weights, but I'm not bulked up. So those are two different things. But the leanness, if we're too lean because muscle mass has gone down, or in the case of kids, if they never developed their muscles, that's a big, big problem. But what I discovered in some of my research, and the one example I gave earlier, which is the adult population in India, 80% of them being over fat. What I discovered was that a high number of people who are normal weight, non-obese, are still over fat. So just because you're in the window where your weight is okay, your BMI is not high and you're not obese, you're not overweight, whatever, you can still have excess body fat. And you may not notice it as much. But in the case of India, China, all of Asia, Africa, 40% of people who are normal weight have excess body fat.
Wow.
That's a serious problem, because the excess body fat issue has a trickle down effect. It's not just that we get tired and we're hungry and we're grumpy and we're not learning as well as we could be, and our brains don't work so well. It's that excess body fat causes inflammation, and inflammation is the first big stage of chronic disease. So when we see half or more of the people in China having hypertension, and when we see diabetes being a serious epidemic in India, it comes from this excess body fat issue. So all of the thing about infectious diseases is gone. Even developing worlds now don't have an infectious disease problem. They have a chronic disease problem, just like the West. And so diabetes, cancer, heart disease, hypertension, liver disease, Alzheimer's, all the chronic diseases come from excess body fat. And so that's something we have to attack. And the way we do that is to first give up sugar.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely the number one advice that I would definitely give to other families out there is sugar is just don't buy it. Don't be around it. You know, teach the kids that fruit and, you know, like, well, we do a lot of fruit, fresh whipped cream for dessert. It's the best dessert ever. Kids love it. But there's a lot of alternatives. My kids don't want to hear this, but there's a lot of alternatives to dessert.
Mm-hmm.
And you have some on your podcast, on your website.
Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsor.
Hey, Jake Stenziano and Gino Barbaro here. Are you in a job that's soul-sucking? Are you looking to create more abundance for you and your family? We've been there before. We've, been in those types of positions, those W-2 jobs that are just draining us of the greater abundance that we know is out there.
Now, Jake and I came together in 2013. We started buying multifamily properties, and in 2015, we launched our first book. We called it Wheelbarrow Profits. That was the buy right, manage right, finance right, the 3-step proprietary framework that Jake and I teach. And you know what? I thought I was done writing books, but my boy over here pulled me in and says, nope. Came out with the honeybee. Now, this honeybee talks all about creating complementary streams of revenue. Now, what do I mean by that? We created a property management company. We created a syndication company. We created the Jake and Gino education company. We've created a capital company that does mortgages. Now, all of these are complementary from those initial investments. Now, the Wheelbarrow Profits book is the how-to book. This is the why and the complementary streams and really adding wealth and legacy to your life.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic run for us in multifamily, and it's created a life of abundance. If you want to learn how to create multiple streams of revenue in whatever business you're in, these life lessons can be applied to many businesses. Click the link down below and pick yourself up a copy.
My wife's favorite topic is all about desserts. She propped up when she heard the word dessert. We had dessert last night. Actually, it was amazing. It was whipped cream and berries. I mean, the whipped cream was actually delicious. I mean,
yeah, it's a good dessert. And if you crunch up some of those that pure cacao paste or shave it on there, you now have an elegant dessert.
That's right.
You need an elegant dessert.
Yes.
Well, I've got an elegant wife, so I don't know if I can have elegant dessert and elegant wife. I don't know if I can have both at the same time. It's too much elegance for me.
The cacao paste is a test I have people do. I have them eat a piece of cacao, and if they almost vomit and they have to spit it out, then we know they're sugar addicted.
Yes.
Because their taste buds haven't changed. When you get off sugar, your taste buds change, and you are no longer sensitive to sweet, and you taste like the Phil's fat burning coffee. People taste it and they say, "Oh, there's sugar in that."
Right.
Well, no, there isn't. You're tasting the natural sweetness of fat, which has glycerol, and if you lose that sweet taste, then you can tolerate eating cacao paste, which is basically it's baker's cocoa.
Exactly.
People are familiar with that baker's cocoa, which is not sweetened.
Right.
When you eat it, I remember as kids being fooled. And you'd put it in your mouth and you'd run over to the sink and wash your mouth out.
Hey, I like it.
So Phil, let me ask you, how would you tell people to go about getting rid of sugar in their diet? Let's give them a couple steps to do that. I know the first thing is I can give 2 steps to everybody. The first one is acknowledging you have it. The second thing is being accountable, having an accountability partner saying, hey, listen, what did you eat? Maybe the third thing is to write stuff down of what you're eating. You'll be shocked at what the heck you're having. And the fourth thing, which is hard, especially during the holidays, is try not to be around it. Try to buy what you're buying. I mean, those are the 4 steps I think that are intuitively and logic to people. But I think the first one is acknowledging that you have that issue and have that problem. But what recommendations would you give? Well,
you're right. It's like other addictions. And if you're addicted to heroin, you don't hang out with your friends who are all doing heroin. It's as simple as that. I think understanding what's going on is very important. We know that when the brain understands why something is, we're able to benefit from it, which is really an amazing thing. If we look at the work of Ellen Langer from Harvard, she's done some amazing studies. One was called the now I can't remember what it's called, but she took a bunch of women who worked at a hotel, making up the rooms and whatnot. And she found a lot of them wanted to exercise, but they were too tired. So she took half of them and explained that what they were doing in the course of the day was exercise. And she found out that those people started losing weight without doing anything else, because they understood what was going on. And so for people who need to, you say to people, just stop eating sugar, no more refined carbohydrates, no more junk food, no more sweeteners, and then they say, well, what do you mean? You say, well, no more bagels, cookies, cakes, desserts, no more rolls, no more rice cakes, no more cereal. And at some point they say, well, what do I eat? You mean you can't think of healthy food? So you have to sometimes spoon feed them, literally, and explain what junk food really is. I have an article on my website called "What Really Is Junk Food," and it explains it, and it's really quite simple. And then you say, well, look, what do you like to eat other than the junk food? And a lot of times I can't come up with anything. But you say, okay, look, for breakfast, I'm going to have a vegetable omelet with a tomato cream sauce, which will take me 30 seconds to make the cream sauce, and then another 2 minutes to make the omelet. Do you like that? Oh yeah, I really like that. Well, how about for lunch? How about a salad with some cheese or salmon, olive oil, vinegar, bunch of vegetables. Do you like that? Oh yeah, that's good. And then dinner, how about a small steak with a couple of servings of like spinach and some zucchinis and red peppers, or what, give them some examples. And my website has a lot of recipes and a lot of examples. What I do is drive people to take the 2-week test, that period where they read the instructions. You can do this, you can't do that. You can eat these things, you can't eat those things. Here's what you can order in a restaurant. And they read through it and they kind of learn what it's like to eat in a healthy way, and they do it. And we're not talking about a long time in seeing results. People are used to being on a diet, doing an exercise program, waiting weeks to see some changes if they even come. We're talking about 2 days of going through sugar withdrawal. Some people take a little longer. You're still addicted. It takes years to get rid of that feeling that when you go by a bakery, it all comes back to you, and you have to look. But by 2 weeks, a lot of people say, I'm like a new person. I'm afraid to tell my doctor what I'm doing.
Well, even the mental clarity you get by not eating the carbs is crazy.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I want to challenge everybody out there. If none of that makes any sense to you, I want you to go to a hospital to see how people are sick. And you can say to yourself, I'm going to end up like this if I don't take action.
I think everyone listening is pretty motivated.
But I'm just saying, like, that'll actually tip your brain, because sometimes let's say, for instance, we talk about climate change, right, and global warming, we don't act because it's so far out into the future, right? Let's make it personal for everybody on this podcast listening. It's all about your life. It's all about your nutrition. It's all about your health. Go and see what it's done to somebody who's 75 years old who had to amputate their foot because they had diabetes, because they didn't take this advice. And then you nip it in the bud. What you do in your 30s affects your 40s. What you do in your 40s affects your 50s. So I think it's time to make it personal, to go out there and see what is happening to other people and making it personal to yourself. I'll give you a quick story. My father had to quit smoking. He tried smoking so many different ways, tried to quit so many different ways. His doctor went to him one day, says, if you don't quit smoking in 6 months, you're going to die of emphysema. The next day he goes to an acupuncturist, does some acupuncture, and goes, I quit. I'm like, Dad, you didn't quit because of the acupuncture. You quit because you heard the story. You're going to die in 6 months. And he actually lived like another 15 years after he quit smoking. But that's to my point. My point is, don't wait that long. Take the action today. and take control of yourself. It's all about responsibility and changing your philosophy and going out there and see what's happening to other people. You don't want that to happen because you're going to lose so much time. You're going to lose so much energy. You're going to lose the productivity. And life isn't fun when you're sick. It's just not fun. You're not.
That's
not
for sure. I mean, quality of life is
Yes.
something we should be cherishing, and,
Mhm.
and we lose track of it so easily. There is a side effect in all of it. And it's not that you have to spend more money on healthy food. In fact, healthy food is cheaper. That's another
That's so
story for
true.
another podcast.
Definitely.
But the side effect is that you might have to buy new clothes because as you lose body fat, we get smaller. We shrink down because fat takes up a lot of space. It doesn't weigh much. Who cares how much you weigh? But when you shrink down and now you have a normal waist, you have a normal level of body fat, your clothes don't fit and you have to buy new ones.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Phil,
is exciting.
I wanted to jump into the exercise just real quick for a few minutes. Could you just give everyone out there, I guess your bio on who you've trained, how you train, and how you come up with your your exercise regimen and your tips on exercise?
I make it up, basically. Only
Well, it's
kidding.
individual. Would you say
Sounds
that
like
it's
it
individual?
sounds like your wife. She's making it up every day.
Yeah,
Wow, it sounds like
it's very individual. So like I don't have a diet to give people. I also don't have an exercise program to give people. I've worked with I don't know how many Olympic athletes, professional athletes, really great athletes. I've never given a program to these athletes. I want them to come up with a program, and if they say to me, well, here's what I think I should be doing on Tuesday, I say, your body doesn't say that. Your body is hurting on Monday after your workout, which is a problem. So on Tuesday, you can't do that. You either rest or you do less, So they eventually learn how to personalize it. My job in the beginning, when I worked one-on-one with people, just like it is today, my job was always to work myself out of a job. I want people to understand how to eat and how to exercise and how to avoid stresses that they may not even know exist that are affecting them. And so, but one important aspect of exercise is that the best exercise for humans is easy exercise, because that's how we burn more fat. Exercise is not about burning calories. Exercise is about burning fat calories. And if we exercise too hard, we burn less fat calories and more sugar calories. That's when you can get in trouble. So exercise should be easy. It's not no pain, no gain.
Wow, that's pretty controversial because everyone talks about that. And you've been talking about it for years. So how do you make it? I know you have the heart monitor and all. Can you go into that just a little bit and give people an idea of how they can make it that way and make it fun? I mean, whether it's walking, light jogging, what do you recommend as far as?
Well, the easiest thing is to just start walking. If you're not active now, you can just start by going out and walking for 10 minutes and develop a routine. And if it's 10 minutes, that's fine. Start walking every day or every other day or whatever. And then after you have this routine, you can go to 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and, 40 minutes, 3, 4, 5 days a week, 6 days a week. Now you're starting to enjoy it. And you're thinking, gee, maybe I'll ride my bike, or maybe I'll start jogging, because when I was in high school, I jogged. Now you can start thinking, well, how much intensity is good for me? And that's where the heart rate comes in as a biofeedback tool. You can get a heart monitor and look on my website. There's something called the 180 formula, which will tell you what your heart rate should be to be in a good fat burning zone. And if you go above that, you get out of that zone. And it's really pretty simple, and it should be enjoyable. But the benefits of that for fat burning are obvious. But the other benefit of that is that you exercise your aerobic muscles, which is most of our muscle fibers. All of our muscles have aerobic fibers, except the jaw. And we do have power muscles that kind of just sit there and wait for, the need for power. If we are outside and it starts pouring and we have to sprint to our car, we don't have to train to sprint. They're those muscle fibers are ready to kick in at any time, but we have to train our aerobic fibers. Those are the fat burning fibers. But what's at the end, the other end of the aerobic fibers? The brain. And so every time we contract our muscles and we stimulate those aerobic muscle fibers, we send messages which originated in the brain down to the muscle, but they come back to the brain and stimulate the brain and bring more circulation to the brain. And we can even build a better brain with that easy exercise routine quite quickly.
So our relationship was predicated on no pain, no gain, right? So me and my wife, she's brought me a lot of pain over the last few years, so maybe I can adopt the heart rate monitor and have the no pain, no gain, have the pain
Yes,
gain.
there you go.
Yeah, it's amazing how we, as a society, I mean, it's bad enough that the government subsidizes junk food.
Mhm.
It's bad enough that hospitals have junk food restaurants
Right.
within the hospital. In some
Glucerna.
cases.
Let me give you sugar while you're taking cancer treatment
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
feed the cancer cells. So that
Yeah.
one has bothered me forever. So
But we have a society that is allowed to promote bad stuff to little kids
Mhm.
and adults. No pain, no gain is one example. I published an article in a scientific journal called Decision Making in Health and Fitness, and I talked about the ways we are programmed to decide on what to eat and how to exercise, and things like just do it. Just do it. Well, wait a minute. My response is don't just do it. Do it right. If you're going to do something, do it right.
Mhm.
Why would you just do something and haphazardly hope that maybe you're going to benefit or maybe you're going to overtrain? The odds are you're going to overtrain.
Well, the
'Cause
problem is you're not a sales guy, and no pain, no gain is a great sales model, right?
it's a great,
Just do
I
it
mean,
is a
look at
great sales
the
model.
just do it, success of just do it, and our society has come out with these commercial blurbs for years and years, way before your time. Wonder Bread helps build strong bodies 12 ways. Well, they actually were forced off the air for that. They had to get rid of that slogan, but they came back with another one, and they're still selling Wonder Bread like crazy today.
Yeah.
It's a wonder that it's bread, right?
Yeah. Dad, I want to talk a little bit about, because we're from New York, all of us, right? I know. And now we're all in Florida. So I want to talk about a little bit of the sun and the importance of the sun, because I could tell you when we lived in New York, every winter would come and my kids looked
Awful.
terrible. They looked so unhealthy. We would get outside once in a while, they would get some overcast sun exposure, right? But they had circles under their eyes. They weren't active outside. It was just such an unhealthy life for them. And since we moved down to Florida, just a little bit of sun exposure every day has made such a difference for them. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about that.
Yeah, I just before getting on a clean shirt, I came in from outside sunbathing. I was taking some notes for an article, and it's a nice blue sky, and the sun is out, which probably is up by you.
Mhm.
And I'm in the sun every day. We have a severe vitamin D epidemic, vitamin D deficiency epidemic, all over the world.
Mhm.
It's a very severe problem. Now, part of it is because when you have excess body fat, it's really hard to get vitamin D from the sun compared to people who don't have excess body fat. But Florida, along with Arizona, are two states that have some of the highest populations of vitamin D deficient people. Florida and Arizona, the two sunniest states in the country.
Well, I know there's a couple of reasons why. I'm assuming one, people think it's too hot, and two, the
sun
lotion, right?
Sun phobia
Uh-huh.
and sunscreen are the two reasons. People don't want to be in the sun. I see people walking down the street and they're carrying, on a day like this, it's 70 degrees and beautiful out, and they're carrying an umbrella. They're walking under the trees, it's shady. They're carrying an umbrella because they don't want to be exposed to the sun. Like it's going to chew them up or something. Okay, I've been in the sun my whole life. I'm not a young chicken. My skin is a little wrinkly. But I'll take that
Mhm.
over vitamin D deficiency, which is a terrible condition that wrecks your immune system. It's why people are sick more in the
Mhm.
winter, like you said.
Right.
But vitamin D is one of the greatest things to protect against cancer, improve brain function. And that's a whole separate podcast to talk
Mhm.
about vitamin D. But the other problem is they lather on the sunscreen, and what that does is A, it prevents you from getting vitamin D, and B, it increases your risk of skin cancer because people think, well, they're putting on sunscreen so they
Mhm.
can hang out in the sun longer. Well, that's not true. So I have a lot of articles on vitamin D. I've been talking about it for years. I used vitamin D in my practice in the 70s.
Yeah.
And I would once in a while see a doctor who we shared a patient with, and he'd say, yeah, I noticed you gave her vitamin D. I never heard of anybody needing vitamin D. You go out to your car on a sunny day, you get enough vitamin.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I wish
Yeah.
it worked that way. It doesn't.
I, so,
And now it's recognized. They're measuring vitamin. It's a very simple test.
It is.
And if 75% of the people in Florida are vitamin D deficient, if you're in New York or north of
Right.
the Mason-Dixon line, you're probably in trouble.
so that's one thing I want to stress, though. When we go out, I'll go out in the morning, especially in the summer or in the late evening. I'm not going to go to the beach at 12 p.m. and be there for the next 4 hours with sun lotion or without. I'm more responsible about it, but we still go out every day, and we're just not idiots about it. I mean, yeah, it's just all common sense for people. So we're
It
not
is
saying go
common
out there for
sense,
4
and
hours in the
yeah.
summertime, right?
Exactly. And at one time, I had to preface every sentence I made about
Yes.
vitamin D in the sun with,
Right.
make sure you don't get a burn.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you're that stupid, stay home. The worst thing you can do is get burned.
Mm-hmm.
And for children,
Yeah.
the worst thing you can do is get a burn, because adults who get melanoma have a history of childhood sunburn.
Right.
And so it's a very serious thing, and you want to pay attention to what's going on, especially on a day when the sky is really blue, which
Right.
means there's not a lot of humidity, so you're going to burn a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share all your websites with people, how people can get a hold of you?
They can't get a hold of me.
If they call me, no, I'm just kidding.
They can go to philmaffetone.com, and that's where all of my health and fitness information
Mm-hmm.
Can be found. And there's a lot of there are literally hundreds of free articles.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of my books are mentioned there.
What's your favorite book, Dad? Because I want to share that with the listeners, because you have so many of them, and I know there's one on children with the brain, which is super important for all you parents. But there's just one on basic health and fitness. So what would
there's two good general books. They're the big books. There's the big yellow book called the Big Book of Training of Endurance Training and Racing, which is for athletes who want to get serious about exercise training and get into competition, whether it's running a 5K or a Ironman triathlon. And then there's a general audience version of that, which is the Big Book of Health and Fitness. That's the red book. And that's, it's got all of my, up to the point it was published a couple of years ago, that's got all of my information that's about nutrition and exercise and brain health and all kinds of other things. And that'll keep you going. And everything I've published since is on my website.
Wrap it up, Jewel, and then I'll wrap it up.
I think that the health in the family is so important. It's for individually, but as a parent, because how we bring up our children with exercise, diet, just lifestyle in general does affect their future. Does affect them, and it affects the children.
It sure does. And when you think about when I think about what I went through as a child, I mean, I was given sugar water at birth. Right. That was my first food, and it basically was my main food until I was 17 or 18, and it affected you.
Your fault.
So
now it affected my children.
Yeah, and it's it's there's so much we can do to kids in a very simple, very honest way that's gonna help them. And doing it as a family is a wonderful thing because you get them all on board, and they're gonna tend to move forward with it as an adult, and then with their kids as well.
They're going to notice too a difference on how they feel. Their moods are going to be better, and that is going to affect everyone as well. Because when there's one kid eating a lot of junk food and they're really crabby, it does affect everyone, as we all know, right? But yes, it is more effort though, and of course it is. It's more cooking, it's more shopping, it's more cleaning. That's going to go. It's just what it is, and I think it's worth it. In the end, it's worth it.
So
it's a routine you have to develop. I mean, I don't think about going out now. If I'm going to go visit somebody, I don't have to plan like I used to. If I'm going to travel, I know what I can bring on an airplane, what I have to bring on it, wherever I'm going. I know that there's going to be a store or wherever. Yeah. So it gets easier as time goes on. But in the beginning,
it too.
It is, all in all, it's pretty simple. But in that transition, you're going from being an addict to being clean, and that's a tough transition to get through. But you can do it, and there's plenty of us out there to help you.
Wow. So I'm going to try to create a framework from the podcast and just give people next action steps. I think the first thing is to acknowledge that you may have an issue with sugar. You may have a problem. You may have excess body fat. The next one is to be responsible. And it's not only you that you're affecting your family, you're affecting future generations, you're affecting your health. So take responsibility on that. The third thing is to change your philosophy on it. Really take hold of it. And I think the next thing is to become educated on it and start listening to your body. And the next step, I hope everyone's writing these things down because these are important, is to do the 2-week test. I mean, I challenge you doing the 2-week test. You know how hard it was for me to do it when I was up in New York with the pizzeria, working at the restaurant? That was one of my motivating factors of why I wanted to get out of the restaurant business, because I was always surrounded by that. And I actually did a pretty good job while I was there, but it's hard because your willpower is not going to hold up. Your willpower at the end of working a 12-hour day, you have nothing to eat. What are you going to do? Most chefs have cereal, or they eat something that's really quick to eat, and it's not a healthy lifestyle. And they're not fat because they eat a lot. They're fat because they eat the wrong things at the wrong time, and they're just not healthy.
Exactly.
Rest. So that's important. So the 2-week test. Once you're done with the 2-week test, start assessing what you're eating. Start looking at what you're eating. And then I think ultimately just create a family plan of what you want to start eating. And Phil, we didn't talk about this, but I'll leave everybody with this. Start a little garden outside. If you see your children growing a tomato or picking a cucumber or having fresh herbs, they know that it's not packaged in a store. They know where the food comes. They'll appreciate the food. We've had chickens before. We've had eggs. We've had all the garden. And the kids know that. And we sort of missed that down here. We're going to get back into it. But that's important for them to know that where the food comes from.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, no. So everyone, I want you to go on the website, philmaffetone.com. And I'm pretty sure your 2-week test info is on there. Is that right?
It's on there, right? And that's the health and fitness website. Yeah. My music website. I am a singer-songwriter. And I spend a lot of time. Maffetonemusic.com. I have a 7th album that I came out with this year called The Best of Phil Maffetone. All of my music on the website is free. You can download it for free and listen to it for free and enjoy it.
There's so many good articles on there. I just really encourage everyone to take a look. It will change your life like it's changed ours, for sure. And I think that first step is to acknowledge it and do something about it, like we were talking about.
And for all the listeners out there, since you can't reach Phil Maffetone personally, you can email Julia at juliabarbaro@gmail.com, and she can reach out to him. So don't worry, you can get to him one way or the other. So we'll throw that out there. Because you know why? For me, it's really important. The Jake and Gino family, we're all about helping others, and we're really all about helping people take that next step. And maybe taking the next step is emailing Julia and saying, hey, Julia, can you send me a link to your dad's book? Or, hey, Julia, can you ask your dad a question? Or, hey, Julia, I'm eating this. Do you have any recommendations? All it takes that first step, and that's what we're here for. We're here to help our community and anyone out there who wants to help. And we can't spoon feed. We can bring you the water. We can't make you drink. So if you're willing to take that drink, we're here to help you with that. So with those words, Phil, we appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, guys. This has been a real honor to be on your podcast. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.